Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kids of Podcast show. Tonight's guest, I'm going to have the author and entrepreneur, Mandelynn Moses. She just released her new book, I Am Not Your Villain, I Am Your Mother. It is all on bookshelves at Barnes & Noble. She come into the studio and she's going to talk about her journey and what inspired her to write an incredible book like this. Here we go, y'all. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Kids of Podcast show. I am Kizza, your host here, and I have my friend here, author, novelist, writer, motivator, speaking for the community out here, minorities, businesswoman, entrepreneur, my friend here, Mandelynn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. How's life been for you for the new year so far?
You know what? So far, so good. I feel like this year has been an up level. I feel like a brand new person. My very first part of the year, I got my book. Got a new house. Starting a new business. Everything's, website is up. I feel like I've been a very productive couple weeks so far.
Absolutely. That's so awesome. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself before we get into your book.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question, but we'll give a little synopsis. Right?
No problem, no worries.
Like,
sorry.
I think it's like, what is that? Anytime somebody says, tell me your story, I'm like, where do you start? But no, I mean, a little bit about me. I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur, an avid world traveler. I've been able to collect 53 visas on my passport since 2018. So I'm an avid traveler, a writer, an artist, and just a lover of all things beautiful. That's me.
Awesome. All right, so then let's get into your book. Tell everyone what's the name of the book, and you can even show us here on camera.
So my book is I'm Not Your Villain, I'm Your Mother, and this is a very beautiful spiritual book about addressing generational trauma and the mother wound. The foundation of the book is based on the fifth commandment, which is honor your mother and your father, and your world will be deemed fruitful. It's the only commandment with a promise. And oftentimes, especially nowadays, I hear that term generational. I'm breaking generational curses. I'm like, nobody cursed you, Right. Like if you compare what you had or you have right now compared to all your ancestors, you're spoiled, right? Nobody cursed you. Your job is to do better than the last generation. That's it. And we're just here to evolve and grow. And so it's a book that really is let me pause, I guess. When I was about to write the book, I reflected on the things that are most important in the world. And everybody likes to focus on global warming or war and politics and blah, 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 getting, all their panties all in a bunch over, things that won't change unless we change how we raise our families. Everything stems down to the family unit. And so if I was going to make the biggest impact, it was going to the core. And the core is fixing the family unit, which was the inspiration of my book.
And what are some of the things that you feel like, as far as fixing the family goes, like how does those things start as far as your book goes?
Well, we live in a day and age right now where the systems and the conglomerates, they want our families ripped apart. They want it ripped apart because as long as we keep our indigenous wisdom away from the next generation, then the next generation is able to be controlled. We stay in modern day slavery. That is exactly why the system wants us to stay separated. We saw this example play out right in front of our face during COVID. Right? They separated grandma and grandpa from the family, even though they've been like, dude, you guys are crazy. We've been through this stuff before, but no, we got to keep them away from everybody. You couldn't even visit them. You had to like wave through them through a window, right? That was done by design. There's no mistake about that. So we need to bring our indigenous roots back into our current family unit, which means raising children, raising families and rearing children. It takes a village to raise a family.
Right.
Absolutely. And we need to focus back on rearing children, which means what you put in is what you get out. The programming from what they look at on their phones and their tablets, on the TV, the music, the food, all of that needs to be at the highest good of the child. So when they grow up to be the next future leaders of the world, they're leading from a heart space and a healthy mind space. Not what we're seeing now. It's just straight wounding. And also the system is designed to rip both of the parents out of the home. So then now who's rearing the children? The system, childcare, education system, the school system. That is what's raising our children. Parents aren't raising children anymore. So then therefore they're just trained to be corporate workers. And many years ago, it was in 2020, I went to a party at my friend's house. It was like a political party where they were, she was throwing a party for this, like an incoming senator or possible senator. He didn't end up winning. And this congresswoman, her background is in education. She used to be a teacher. And they said to her, or she said, it's time for us to get our kids back in school. We need to train our workers. And everybody's like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, did she just say that?
Wow.
And I'm sitting here looking around the room like, why are you guys cheering for this?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What do you think, like, what do you think they're cheering for? Like, why do you think they were probably cheering for that in theory? It's crazy,
I don't know if they, you know what it is? It's when you're in the psychosis, you can't see the psychosis because you're part of the psychosis. So you can't see that there's anything that's wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's like, no, our children are not workers. They're not workers. But you see that the education system is set up just for that, right? You get up at an ungodly hour.
Right.
You go to school. You get a 10-minute break, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go back to class. And then you get a lunch. And then you go back to class. You get another 10-minute break. Mm-hmm. Then you go back to class. And then you take your work home with you. And then you get used to working at home, right?
Got it.
But then that is the exact system of corporate America. So when it comes time to go to work, they're not fighting the system because they're a part of it. That's how the education system was designed to train them. Slavery never ended. It just evolved.
Yes.
That's it.
Agree to that.
And so this is why my book, I'm so excited to start going out there and speaking about this because we've got to break that cycle. Like, this has to come to an end. And the only way to tear it down isn't by lighting a fire and burning these buildings down. It's by raising empowered children.
Right. Okay. And so what would be your ideal vision for education model? Would be homeschooling more like, or?
So years ago, I lived in Bali, and my biggest dream was to go do work at the Green School. And like 24 hours into being at Bali, I got the opportunity to go speak at the Green School. They've got, they're definitely considered the most revered school system in the world. Mm-hmm. And everything there is hands-on training. It's all in nature. They have buses that pick up the kids to bring to school. Right. The kids make the gasoline to fuel the buses. We walked by their geometry class. Yeah. They were making pizza. Everything's hands-on. The graduating senior class, they had to do a TED-style talk. They set up their own TED-style talk. And so they had to give a presentation and be an expert on something. These kids that graduate from the Green School do amazingly beautiful things in the world. So, yeah, the ideal education system for me is something that's very hands-on.
Right.
That's in nature. That is fluid. You're not waking these kids up at 6 o'clock in the morning, rushing things. There's no such thing as homework. You're not bringing any homework back to the house. And a 4-day model where it's only like Monday through Thursday, because we need to have more time at home with each other. And this is where learning actually happens, is in the home.
All right, and so your travelings around the world sounds like definitely have a big influence as far as your book goes.
Huge impact. So when I got the calling to leave the country in 2018, I was running on a treadmill at the gym, and I just heard this voice, and it said, "Move to Belize." And I was like,
Belize.
"What? Belize?" And I heard it again. It said, "Move to Belize." And I was like, I always listen to that voice in my head, right? I'm like, all right, I guess it's time to revisit my goals anyways. So I finished my workout, and I went home, and I got a poster board, and I wrote on the top. It was funny. I had 10 goals. I don't remember all of them. I just remember the first two. The first one was move to Belize by September 1st, 2018. And the second one was buy a Tesla.
Oh, man.
Those two goals clearly.
Hey, listen, you ain't gonna be spending money on no gas if you buy a Tesla. You
Well,
just plug it up and go over there.
It's funny because that was my goal for that year, was to buy a Tesla, until God told me to move to Belize.
There you go. Exactly.
So I never got my Tesla, but we did move to Belize. Actually, it was ironic. We ended up moving September 2nd. And I told God, I said, after I wrote that down, and I said, all right, God, if this was really you, you need to make this happen.
Right.
And literally all of the mountains parted, and it was reality. So it was moving so fast, but I share that because my travels, as much as a blessing as they were, it was a pilgrimage. It was my pilgrimage. It was me going through unraveling every single shadow part of myself, immersing myself in different cultures, different environments, different experiences, and absorbing all these different ways of living. We lived with the local people, so picking up on their indigenous cultures and things like that. That's what it was. It was me going out into the world to learn about myself and the world. So it wasn't vacation.
Right. Oh, exactly.
It wasn't vacation.
You were putting in work, definitely.
Yeah, I was putting in work.
So you hit the ground running, sound like, on all these different countries and everything, and you pretty much like soaked in what their cultures are and how they do things and stuff like that, and then you tied it in to what's going on now. That's
absolutely
incredible. What are some of like the highlights in the book so far you've read in there?
Well, it was pretty emotional. Like, it was so unreal.
Do you have some like personal experiences in there you share?
Everything in here is a personal experience, and how I transmuted that into my spirituality. Because I grew up a very abused child. You know, I came into this world unloved, you know, and I'm not saying that lightly. You know, you can ask my mom to this day. She can't stand me, you know.
Got it.
And so that's what I came into the world in. I came into the world like that. And so, but when you come into a world being unloved, you have to learn love. So my entire life has been a lesson of learning love. And so now, you know, one of my favorite compliments that I ever get, or not one of, the best compliment that I ever get, is when people tell me, you are an expression of love. And when I'm around you, I no longer feel anxiety. Because I express that, because that's who I am.
You can feel that energy.
And anytime somebody tells me that, it's like, that's what I went through all this for. I went to make other people feel good in my presence.
Okay. Do you mind sharing a little bit, some of your personal experiences from the book?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That'd be really cool.
Let's see here. Just like, okay, well, I'll share this one.
Right.
Well, maybe this is a little bit too deep.
Yep, whatever you feel comfortable with. This is your time.
Okay.
You're doing good.
Okay, well, actually, this is chapter 6, Living the Dream. This was actually moving to Belize. So we went to, do you want me to read part of it or just explain this piece?
You can do both.
Okay.
At that time.
So my dream had finally come into fruition. My lifelong dream of living out of the country had become a reality. As we rode the ferry to our new home, staring at the crystal clear turquoise water, I thought about how grateful I was that I was to no longer have a house or a car. I had nothing to worry about back home. It was just me and the sea. I recall thinking this is what freedom feels like. But that feeling of awe was short-lived. As we pulled up to the ferry dock, there was an overwhelming stench of rotten eggs. There was a 6-foot wall of sargassum at shore, and the smell was overwhelmingly pungent. It smelt like spoiled eggs. It was so gross. The sight was far from the sandy shores we were expecting. We left the dock and headed to the golf cart taxi to check into our Airbnb. We had rented a guest room attached to the main house of our host. Our place was lofted above ground. We lugged our suitcases, filled everything we owned up to the stairs to our room. So it's so funny because that experience, we expected to be going to the Caribbean and just having like this, like I didn't know what I was expecting. And moving to Belize, getting there was a shock. It was a shock. It was hot as hell. The first day I got 68 mosquito bites. Most of them were on my face and my neck. Like, what mosquito bites your neck, right?
Right.
We had no air conditioning in the room. Those old spring beds that were just it was crazy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
As soon as we showed up, I was like, what happened? Like, we were expecting, like what you would think you would expect when you leave to go to an exotic island,
Right.
And it was not that. And I think that was when the reality hit me. I'm not here on vacation.
Oh, I got you.
I'm not here on vacation. Like, it's time to get to work.
Exactly.
And so, so we had to make the most out of that experience.
Okay, did you guys do some humanitarian things while you there?
We did. So I didn't want to just live, I didn't want to just go into a country and be like every other American and Canadian who goes in there and it's like, you got to change it to be like America and Canada.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Which is what all Americans and Canadians do.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to, I wanted to volunteer at the elementary school. So we went to the elementary school and we volunteered for 6 months for their, they don't call it kindergarten or first grade. I can't remember what they called it, but anyways, but they were kids between the ages of 5 and 7, and there was 40 kids in that class. So that's what we did.
Right, that's so awesome. That's super cool. So crystallize for us the process. If I want to be a novelist, my kids, my daughters, they want to be a writer, an author. Like, what was the journey like in this whole process?
So this is my second book. Technically, it's my second book. It's my first book that I published. So my first book, I did self-publish that book, but I didn't do anything with it. Like, I sold, I think, like 26 copies of that book or something like that. I didn't really push it, but it taught me how to write a book, right? Okay. And it was funny because after I wrote that book, I was like, this book wasn't for the people. It was for me, right? This book is for the people. Right. That book was for me. There was a lot of healing that book brought out in me. So then I took that book and used it as a skeleton for this book. But the process, I always say this because a lot of people say they get writer's block. There is no greater discipline on the planet than writing a book. And right. I'm a business consultant. I've worked in every kind of business and done every task you can possibly imagine. Right. And there is no greater discipline than writing a book. So a lot of people get, what they say is writer's block, right? And it's easy to get writer's block. I personally never got writer's block through this book. I was completely inspired and just plowed through this book. But I always say, if you're going to write a book, write the last chapter first, write the last chapter first, and you don't have to write like the whole chapter, but at least write the 3 things that you want people to take out of this book, right? So this is a pretty big book, you know.
Right.
A normal book is 80,000 words. This is 129,000 words, so it's a pretty hefty book. But I wrote the 3 things that I wanted people to get out of the book. And then that helped me to stay focused and on track on the direction the book was going. So when I was writing, I'm not just writing frivolously because I just want to share a story. It's got to move towards a purpose. And so when you have that end in mind, it helps you to stay structured while you're writing the book.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's cool. And what advice would you have for them as far as like, is there any like publishing companies you would recommend and stuff like that for them? As far as
So the
experience?
thing is no.
No, it's not.
No, and the reason for that is so. When I finished writing this book, like I said, I self-published my first book.
Mm-hmm.
So when I self-published that first book, I didn't know how to. I'm a marketer. I'm a brander. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know how to market a book, right? I mean, I could put some ads and stuff like that, but I don't know how to get it into Barnes and Noble and Readsy and all these things. Like I don't know. So, but because I put my heart and soul into this book,
Okay.
I told myself I'm not going to self-publish this book. Like I'm not going to self-publish it. It's getting picked up. So after I wrote the book, I straight said to God, I did the work. I wrote the book. Now you find me the publisher. When the world is ready for this book, get this book published. And I can't remember the name of the site. I'd have to look it back up in my email, but there's a site that you go on, and that's where all the publishers and the book agents, they look for work on that, and you could submit your work to them. So, so I submitted my work out to a bunch of agents, and I got a bunch of rejections, right?
Wow.
I got a ton of rejections.
Real quick, are there any particular reasons sometimes why they reject it?
You have no idea why they
We
reject
never know?
it. You
Okay.
never know. It's like anything. It's like any successful person has failed a zillion times, right?
Got it.
I'll share this story. Early on in the process, I did have an agent who was really interested in my book. So first you submit the first 30 pages of your book, right?
Right.
And then she was like, I like it. Can you send me your full manuscript? So I was like, all right. So I sent her my full manuscript. She submitted it to her publisher, and then she called me back about a week later and told me that they didn't accept my book. And she said, however, do not let this discourage you. She said, you are a phenomenal writer, and the world really needs this book. She says the chances of you getting this book picked up are incredibly rare. Only 1 in 6,000 manuscripts ever get looked at.
Right.
So she said, but you promise me you will be relentless in getting this book published. And at that moment, I just said, well, it looks like I'm going to hear 6,000 no's. So you got to put your work out there and do not get discouraged when you hear 6,000 no's. Now, I didn't hear 6,000 no's, but I heard a lot to the point where I was like, I dreaded opening up my email. I was like, sorry. It was like, oh my gosh. So the funniest thing about the agent who did pick up my book, he had a scout that works for him. And she had picked up my book, or she had looked at it, but she had sent me my book got picked up of September of last year. So April of last year, she had sent me an email asking me about my book, but because I had heard so many no's, I probably just, deleted it with this, this spew of rejection letters. So anyway, she's like, hey, I just want to know, did your book ever get picked up? She goes, I sent you an email back in April. I was like, oh, well, that's funny. I must have missed it.
Right.
She's like, do you mind if I submit this to my agent? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess. And then he called me on a Monday, and he was asking me about the book and asking me about myself. He's like, I absolutely love you, and I absolutely love the concept of the book. The timing is perfect. And he said, I'm going to tell you that it's really rare that a book gets picked up. He said, and I promise you I've never done this before. I always get kind of emotional when he about this point, but he says, I promise you I've never done this before, but I am going to personally write a recommendation of this book and put it on the top of your manuscript, and I'm going to put it on the desk of the owner of the publishing company.
All right, there we go.
And he did. And 4 days later, I get a phone call. And, of course, it's only 4 days later, so I'm thinking rejection.
Right.
And I'm in an elevator, and he says, congratulations, you just became an internationally published author.
Wow.
And
there we go.
But I was in such shock and disbelief. And I'm dyslexic, so I was like, nah, he's lying. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't believe it. And so anyways, I'm literally arguing with him on the phone. And he's like, you know what, why don't I just give you a call tomorrow? And I said, he's like, why don't I give you a call tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I'm going to email you the very simple contract.
Yes.
And why don't we talk tomorrow? I was like, I think that's a good idea. And then he sent me an email that was in layman's terms.
Oh, man.
Congratulations. You should be incredibly proud of yourself right now.
Right.
And it still took me 5 days to let that sink in. And then 5 days later, he's like, I never heard from you. I was like, to be honest, I was in shock. And so he's like, you do realize this book is going to make you incredibly rich, don't you?
Mm.
And I said, no. He's like, this book is going to change the world. That's why they picked it up.
That's so awesome. Explain to our audience about the book cover. We can't even go without even with the cover, the design behind that and the thought process behind that, what it represents.
I had to fight to get this cover on the front of my book because according to my publishing contract, you can't use your art because they can't verify where it came from, so it could be copyright. So I was like, all right. So I submitted my artwork, and then I was like, okay, just a slight variation is fine. But they came up with things that were definitely not a slight variation.
Right.
So finally I was like, look, I'm not going to be happy until you put my artwork on the book. So I had to sign a contract that said, if it comes back as copyright, I would have to pay a fee, and I was like, gladly, where do I sign, right? But I wanted this book. The other day I showed a friend my book, and she's like, oh my God, that's deep. I'm a marketer, I'm a brander, and I love creating logos and things in my artwork, but there's always a lot of symbolism in this. And, I'm not your villain, I'm your mother. I wanted to showcase the beauty and the sadness of being a parent. Like there's a lot of beauty in being a parent, but there's a lot more sadness that comes with being a parent. And so I wanted to showcase that. I wanted the baby to be held in a womb, and I wanted to emphasize the light on the baby because we need to put the focus back on the baby, and the roots in the back of it, it's kind of got a glare, but on the back here represent the tree of life coming from our roots, our generation, our ancestors, and her veil represents obscurity. How as parents, once we have a baby, our identity becomes obscured, and everything now revolves around this little human. And so that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to represent on that book cover.
All right. So where and how much we can find this book at? The
book is going to be available everywhere. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Readsy, Target, Walmart. It's going to be in a bunch of bookstores all over the world, which is really exciting. I don't have an exact date yet, but when we post this, I should have a date.
Oh, yeah.
But my first book signing is going to be at the Barnes & Noble at Tempe Marketplace, and I expect everybody to show up. I want a big spectacle,
Right.
So that you'll be able to find it everywhere.
All right. I'm excited. I'm definitely going to be getting a copy of it. I'm highly interested in your travels and in your experiences that you had. Look, y'all, this is really cool art. If you can see it, like it's just really cool. Bam. I am not what were we gonna say? I am not
I am not your villain.
villain.
I am your mother.
I am your mother. Okay, y'all. We got to get this book.
And I want to say, like, it's, you know, because I'll say this title to, like, men, and they're like, is it just for mothers? And I'm like, no.
No.
You know, this book is written for any child of God. Any child of God, you know, and it was funny because I was debating after I finished writing the book, I was going to either name the book "The World Needs a Mother," and or "I Am Not Your Villain, I'm Your Mother." And of course, I'm a marketer, so I'm like, nah, that's a damn good title.
All right, that is a very good title.
That's a damn good title. So, but the world does need a mother, and so that's this. This book is written by Divine Mother. And so it's for everyone, men, women, children, doesn't matter. This book is for you.
All walks of life.
All walks of life. Anybody who's gone through any trials and tribulations in their life and are figuring out a way to transmute that to develop a deeper relationship with yourself and God, this is your book.
Wow, that's incredible. That is really, really incredible. Thank you. Appreciate you showing the world, coming today, showing the world I Am Not Your Villain, I Am Your Mother book. Everyone, please support her. You know, this is going to be really, really good. I'm excited to read it. All of the chapters. How many chapters in here again?
12.
Oh, yeah, 12 chapters. And that's my favorite number. My favorite number is number 12 anyway. So I'm definitely going to connect and tap into that. Seriously. Well, thank you, Mandelynn, for your time today. I appreciate that. We're going to make sure we're going to have a QRC code that people can pull up on their phones. They can go directly to the source and check out your book and support you and support what you're doing in the community. We really appreciate you and everything you're doing and continue to do that.
Yeah, thank you so
got
much.
Anything you want to say to the community? Anything last words?
I mean,
Go ahead.
definitely. Definitely connect with me on Instagram. My handle is Mandelynn Moses. Everything, all my socials are just my name. Blessings to have a unique name.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, for like the different events and book signings, that will all be posted in my website, which is mandelynmoses.com. So definitely check out my website. And I just look forward to seeing everybody at the event at Barnes & Noble. I'm just really excited about that. And I just want to say, ever since I wrote my book, like the power of visualization, right? So I would always drive by the Barnes & Noble at Tempe Marketplace, and I would always imagine my poster in the window. I'm like, I would just picture, like, that's where my poster is going to be. So I showed up at the Barnes & Noble, and I was like, hey, I'm a local author, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you. And so it's like, I can't even wait for that moment because
Right.
I've literally been like manifesting that moment for the last couple years, and to see it like actually happen and is just the most phenomenal feeling. I can't wait. So I just really just can't wait for you all to share that moment with me.
All right. So one more time, your Instagram, your social media is going to be at Mandelynn.
At Mandelynn Moses.
Moses. All right. No dots, no hyphens, just at Mandelynn Moses. How do we spell your name? We want to make sure we spell that right.
Right. Mandelynn, and then Moses. So, and then we're about to post a bunch of videos and things like that up on YouTube. So definitely subscribe to us on YouTube, and then also join me on my website.
All right. Join her on her website. All right. Hey, y'all. Thanks for visiting with us today, coming through. Thank you for coming through, hanging out with me on the podcast. All right. And we appreciate you coming out, and thank you for coming in. And don't forget, y'all, I'm going to do it again. I can't help it. All right. I am not your villain. Right? I am your mother. All right, y'all. Let's get it together. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.